Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. As part of our Mind-Body Connection series, we'll continue to look more deeply at the three columns and their corresponding action steps. Today, I'll be looking at the problem of subjective language and how it leads to doubt and a lack of power. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below and I'll get back to you personally. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars or get any of my PDFs at www.crushingdoubt.org. One of the main problems in human interactions and in the field of psychology is in the incredibly discrepant meaning of words between two people. Take narcissism. What does it mean to 5 different people? If you ask 5 different people, you're going to get 5 different answers. You really will, even though they may think they mean the same thing. So what does this do? This leads to lots of assumptions in communication. It leads to feelings that are not based in reality. It can lead to a crisis in confidence in one's own perceptions. And these are all major problems just coming from the meanings of words and our lack of general awareness that we need to clear up those meanings. Now, this is also happening in mind-body reading and research. We talk about neural pathways. We talk about unconscious emotion. We talk about what it means to journal. We talk about what does it mean to think emotionally. These sound simple when we lay them out there. But what we're running into again and again is all of those questions that you end up having. Wait, what does that actually mean? What did you mean when you said it? And what did it mean to me when I heard it? So this is part of the reason you all can't get the answers you need with respect to what to do for your symptoms. You're hearing a lot of information, but we're not necessarily connecting on what we actually mean. So here's what we need to do. We must challenge the assumption that we understand each other as a basic fact. The fact is we don't. That needs to be the assumption. The assumption needs to start with, we do not understand each other, and we need to double back and communicate again to make sure that we do. Now, this is one of the reasons that repetition is so important in this work, because we do need to go over it again and again until we know we've got it. It's also the reason that communicating with each other is so important. And when I say communicating, I don't just mean that one time. It is repetitive communication. It's over-communicating to make sure that we are connecting. So I often ask, what did you just hear? Or I say, did I hear you correctly about this? I do that in session all the time with patients, but I do it in my life because I know otherwise people can go with a huge misunderstanding and they can take that understanding and run with it for months, years, their whole lives. So let's talk about the problem of subjective language in understanding what is happening in your mind-body experience and how it leads to doubt. In all of your efforts to get better, you're probably overloaded with terms. In fact, I know you are. But you probably have no greater clarity than you did before. If anything, you might be more confused because each term loads in some confusion potentially if we're not being clear about what is being said, or if you're not clear that you may be hearing a different thing than what they mean. So one strength of my 3-column work, my 3-column system, is that it isn't tied to other terminology. I have my own terminology, things like the columns or, my other original concepts, but at least I actually know what those mean. I can tell you what they mean. Whereas with other people, let's say we're talking about neural pathways, that's talked about in so many different sources that even if people are probably in the right ballpark with each other, it could mean something else. In my system, I don't get caught up on terminology. I focus on what do we actually mean. Now, what this means is we get a lot less tripped up on things like diagnoses or scientific debates of terms, and we focus more on the actual meaning of everything. This is why a lot of times in my Q&As or other places where I hear from people, they'll ask me about a term, or they'll ask me about a certain type of symptom and ask, could this be mind-body? And what's going on in my head is I'm not even really thinking about those terms. I'm thinking about what's actually happening. So if we can not get hung up on the specific words, if we don't have those specific words to get stuck on, we can just focus on the simple meaning of it. And that's the nature of the columns. They came from my wish to understand what is actually happening without much terminology. I know I have my own terms, but they are on purpose not brought from somewhere else. because they're supposed to have the exact meaning I'm giving them. So I did a video on the difference between diagnosis and conceptualization. This is part of what I'm getting at. Conceptualization means you actually fully understand what's happening. Diagnosis means you're putting a label on something that's supposed to describe it, but usually it doesn't. Here's the other thing that we can do if we break away from the subjective language of words, specific words. We can get rid of some unhelpful concepts, like the rigid definitions that medicine has about what might be mind, body, or not. I've had people say to me, well, a herniated disc doesn't cause back pain, but in this specific instance, this could be. And listen, I'm not begrudging people in medicine making sure that things are safe. They need to do that. But they also need to recognize they have a responsibility with respect to doubt. It's okay to say if they need to say whatever they need to say medically. But I get a lot of people coming to me who had their doubt enhanced by these discussions because of a certain word, or because a certain cadence of the way it was even said, or a percentage. If they say, I'm 99.9% sure, we know. You hear 0.1% not sure. We need to know what the actual meaning is, what's actually being taken in. So here's the thing. We simply cannot let other people define anything for us in words. We need to stick to science and logic, but only when it comes to their actual meaning, not necessarily their actual words. The words can lead to doubt, they can lead to severe limitations in our getting better, and many, many roadblocks. So here's my rule of thumb. I let doctors make the determination of life or death things, as well as things that could alter systems that cannot heal, such as internal organs. Anything that's going to be life or death or permanently altering, I stay out of the way of the doctors. They're the ones who know this, and that's great. Even they could probably work on their terminology to each other, but I don't play a role in that. I want you guys to be safe and go the medical route when it comes to ruling out those very important things. But once we're past that, and doctors have gotten a chance to rule these things out, we can then proceed safely to the science and logic of understanding. And it is very important that we do that without being so tied to specific words. As I said before, repetition, it's funny that I'm repeating this actually, but repetition can often be key, as can looking at converging evidence. Remember, the goal is to understand it. If it takes going over it again and again, fine. Whatever it takes to get it understood. If it takes looking at it from all different angles, that makes perfect sense. That's one of the reasons I do it this way. All of your questions are to be honored and respected because they also add to true understanding. And that is, after all, what we're after. Ask every question you have. There is no stupid question. They're all brilliant and important ones because you have them. They must be resolved in actuality, whatever terminology we might use. My whole system focuses on getting the answers right using science and logic. If we run up against science and logic, then we actually have much more to understand and we have to keep working at it. You don't want to contradict science and logic, but that is not the same thing as words. Words are often used in ways that don't clarify science and logic. We've got to be very careful about that. So each and every mind-body system you encounter with all of these wonderful practitioners out there who are trying to help and doing a very good job in many ways, but they're asking you to do certain things, and they need to follow, I would say, the same standard that I'm trying to meet here, which is you shouldn't be able to poke holes in these theories. If they can only describe part of the path, then how much trust can we put in it fully? And I've said this before. If they're describing part of the path accurately, great. But it would be much easier for you guys if they would say, you know what? I understand this part of the path. I don't understand this part. Go to this guy for this. Go to this woman for this. We have to be clear and we have to, really not BS about it. If we don't have answers, we tell you. But we are after the real answers. And we have to stay connected in that. And we can't use terminologies that get very confusing and take us away from that. So here's the thing. The columns, my 3 columns, they work because, at least in my estimation so far, they describe the full picture. That's at least their goal. If I have another question, I'm going to expand this model because it has to describe the full picture. Think about what it describes. What happens when new symptoms come in or old ones flare up and get worse? That's the emotions column. What is happening that is leading to chronic conditions? That's the doubt column. Why are some people getting better than others? Maybe they're working in the wrong column. This is where my system is answering these questions that I don't really hear answered otherwise. Here's another. Why am I not getting better? Or not getting all the way better? Or taking longer to get better than other people? That's where the power column comes in. Every question leads to greater understanding if we work with it and we don't get hung up on subjectivity. So in science and logic, there is an answer to everything. We're basically combining Einstein with Sherlock Holmes, which is a potent combination. They both never stopped asking questions, even if Sherlock Holmes is fictional. He's still a hero of mine. I almost feel like he's real. But I don't get stuck on things that aren't real. That's what I'm talking about today. So removing subjectivity, which they both did, whether in real life or in fiction, is very key to getting answers. So here's the thing. In the postmodern world, there's a movement called Post-Modernism, and it is about the fact that everything is subjective. Well, they got some things right. Some things are subjective, like psychology. Psychology is generally quite subjective. But your mind-body experience, while it could have some subjective reasons for why it is happening, there is an objective reality that we can discover. So what we have to do with science and logic is to champion objectivity. And we have to challenge the notion that objectivity is not possible. In postmodernism, they don't believe it's possible. That is not correct. There is objective truth. The earth revolves around the sun. The sun is very hot. There's all kinds of things that we can know. So we have to champion the notion that objectivity is possible. And in fact, we have to put it at the top of our value chart. It has to be way up there in what we value. Objectivity is how we get our answers, and words and their meanings are often too subjective. So try to look past whatever word is being used, whatever meaning seems to be being suggested, and connect to what do they actually mean. Ask them. Push them to tell what they actually mean. Tell them what you are hearing. Tell them what you actually mean if they're misunderstanding what you're saying. If we're not communicating effectively, we're not getting anything done. And we have to recognize the threat of subjectivity. Do not let anyone box you in with words or get you confused with a definition. We don't need to be hung up on definitions. We need to be hung up on reality and truth. So we need to connect not on what the words are supposed to mean, but on what they actually do mean. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and I will get back to you personally.